My name is Zeina Oweis, and I'm a product manager on the G Suite team. During this session, my colleagues Stacy and Mario will also be joining me on stage. G Suite has long been known and loved by users because it makes them more productive. There are G Suite apps that many of you here in the room probably know and use. Think Gmail, Google Docs, Drive, Calendar. All of these apps are designed to boost your productivity at work. Some of the features that we're going to cover during this session have been around for a while and are a staple for G Suite. But others actually have been announced at Google Cloud Next this year. So keep an eye out for these. We're going to indicate that on the slides. You're probably wondering what this illustration is. My colleague Bradley helped me visualize what it feels for a lot of people at work today. They often find themselves in a sea of information, and they're also always racing for efficiency. So now looking at this illustration, how many of you here relate to this image? I see a few hands going up. And at work, you're always juggling tasks, drinking from the fire hose of information, and your workflow is being continuously interrupted by pings from your colleagues, requests from clients. Let's look at this stat up here. What it says that each time you're interrupted, it takes you 23 minutes, or a little over 23 minutes, to get back to the task in hand. That's a lot of time for each interruption that you get. So that's why you should tell your coworkers each time they interrupt you. You're wasting 23 minutes of my time. Another stat that is top of mind for me is the average number that a knowledge worker, so that's someone that sits behind their desk, spends reading and responding to emails a week. And that number is 11 hours. Now, some of that work is creative work. It's work that you were hired to do, and you want to probably continue doing it. But a big portion of these 11 hours are actually just wasted time, and they can be really sped up. On the product team that I'm on G Suite, we actually look at these two stats and think, how can G Suite, or the tools that we build, keep you more focused so you don't context switch that much? And how can we speed up these 11 hours that you spend on email? On G Suite, we designed our product to do two things. We want to help you do more things, and we want you to do things faster. So this is, one, staying focused, and two, doing more faster. Today, as I said, we want to showcase how we actually do these two things that we claim we do. To do that, I'm going to introduce Irene. Irene works at a great company called Kitchen Appliances. And for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to walk you through a month or so of Irene's work, Irene's day at the office. And throughout the presentation, we're going to highlight features in the apps I mentioned earlier that actually boost the productivity of Irene and her team. So here's the story. There's a big review on the calendar. Irene is preparing, and her team are preparing to launch a new line for the kitchen appliances line, a new product for the kitchen appliances line, and it's called the Ultra Stove. And the review is on the calendar in 3 weeks. Now, I'm sure a lot of you now are thinking about that big project that you have lined up on the calendar. Maybe it's next week or next month. And when you think about a task like that, you think of a few things. One is that the big review cannot be pulled in an all-nighter and in one step. It's actually a game of multiple milestones, there are deadlines, and there are dependencies. Two, the reviews like these are not just about the final slide deck that you present or the proposal. There's a lot of busy work and technical work that goes behind the scenes. This information is usually spread and stored all over the place, multiple folders. Some of it is discussed over email threads. Some of it is lost over instant messaging. And three is that you're rarely working in a siloed. You're working with stakeholders. There are people who need to approve your work. What's worse is that these people in this day and age are all over the world. They're working actually on different time zones in different offices. And finally, these reviews are never linear. You don't go from point A, B to C. There's a lot of back and forth, and you have to go back to point A after you got to B, and then go back to C, just to iterate on the work that you're doing. The product teams on G Suite studied problems like these, or user journeys like these. We talked to customers like you to understand how can we get that process a lot more efficient. And we concluded that there are four main stages when you're trying to work on a task like that. One, there is a project lead or one-point person who's starting the project. They're putting the plan together. And then they're spreading that plan with their teammates and stakeholders, so they're communicating with the team. And then they're collaborating on the analysis, on the slide deck, on the technical work, other deliverables. And finally, they're presenting the proposal or the plan, and that is where that final stage comes in. Mario is going to walk us through this first stage, the getting started phase.
Good morning. Let's see. So getting started. Getting started is sometimes the hardest part of the whole process, right? Irene, even from the get-go, knows that she wants to work efficiently and effectively, and she wants to stay focused. So let's take a look at how G Suite helps her out there. So as Zeina mentioned, a review is scheduled for Irene. And like many of us, Irene's checking email all the time, and the way that she's alerted to the review is she gets an invitation in her inbox. Now, the nice thing about the way that G Suite works, especially Gmail and calendar integration, is that you have actionable emails when you get these invites. So in this case, Irene's told when the meeting is, who's going to be on the meeting, where to go, but she's also given buttons to quickly respond. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the yes, no, maybe. But the nice thing about the way that we're integrating G Suite in a more cohesive way is that Irene can even get a little bit more information using the G Suite side panel. How many people are familiar with this in the new Gmail? Awesome, I see a lot of hands. So in this case, Irene can actually open up Calendar in the side panel and take a look at the day of the review and verify that, oh yeah, okay, I have no blockers, I can go ahead and say yes to this. Or worst case scenario, if there are blockers, the review's pretty important, she can go ahead and edit those other events and move them around as needed so that the calendar event is not blocked. In addition, Irene knows she has a deadline she has to work towards. And she can use the mini-month view in the calendar side panel to take a look at how many weeks she has left to work. She's got about 3 weeks to get this whole thing ready to go, and she's got a lot of work to do. So Irene knows that in order to get this thing kicked off, she wants to get all the relevant information needed together and start organizing the team. So let's take a look at how she does that. Now, finding the right files, finding the right information, that's sometimes the hardest part of the whole process. And what's really interesting is we looked at a couple of different studies, one from McKinsey, one from IDC, and we found that 20% of the time, people are actually using that time to find the right files. That's a lot of searching, a lot of hunting. More shockingly, 38% of the time, people are actually looking for files, not finding them, and then recreating the content. That's redundant work, and it's totally wasted. Fortunately for Irene, she's on G Suite. And so all of the things that her team and Irene has created are all available at her fingertips using Cloud Search. So, for example, she's working through the UltraStove proposal and she realizes, there's an area of the project that I'm not super familiar with, and there's a whole team driving the AI portion of that. A simple keyword search for UltraStove AI, she gets a lot of files, but she also gets indexed emails that she was CC'd on about UltraStove AI, all in the search results. So she can go back and review those things in Gmail, or she can open up those files and take a look to start gathering the right information to prep her team. So now Irene's got a bunch of files she wants to look at. She's kind of poking through different decks and different design documents, and she finds some interesting stuff. Like, for example, the AI team actually did a go-live event back in March. She wants to include that in her proposal of when the timeline for the UltraStove launch is coming around, because you don't want to launch AI ahead of schedule. So she takes a note. And the nice thing here is that we're getting a sneak peek at something that's coming to not only Docs and Slides, but Sheets and Calendar, which is that same G Suite side panel that you saw in Gmail. We're going to be rolling that out in the coming months. So Irene selects something from the slide deck, and she right-clicks on it and saves a note in Keep, right from the side panel. What's cool about this integration is that when she takes that note, there's a reference link added to the note automatically for Irene. So she can jot down information in Keep. There's a reference note there for her. And later on, when she accesses that note either on Keep or in another instance of the Keep side panel, that link is there for her, taking her back to the source where the note was created. An even cooler thing is, the next time she comes back to this slide deck, all the notes that she took in that deck are now automatically pulled up in focus, no matter where they are in her keep corpus, because it's related to the deck that she's looking at. Irene also notices that, hey, it might be a good idea to go ahead and create a note to herself about sharing this with her UX counterpart, Mike. He's going to be working on some of the UltraStove presentation, and she wants to schedule a meeting to review the deck with him. So she puts a note, and again, there's a reference link to it, so she can use it for future reference. Okay, Irene's gone through all these different things. She's pulled together a bunch of information. She's taken a bunch of notes. Now it's time to outline a plan. So she creates a new blank document, and she starts pulling information together. And again, the G Suite side panel with its Keep integration allows her to quickly drag and drop things into her outline and add them to her document immediately. Those reference links are available, so even when she's in a different doc, she can add those links to this doc and share them with her team. So let's take a quick look at how getting started worked for her using some of the G Suite tools. She was able to quickly take action in Gmail when the calendar event arrived in her inbox. Calendar in the side panel not only let her check to see if she was available and confirm ahead of time, but it also allowed her to quickly move any blockers out of the way and take a look at how much time she has to actually prep with her team. Cloud Search put everything in G Suite at her fingertips. Her emails were indexed along with her documents, and she was able to do simple searches to find those things. And then reference links and keep notes helped keep all the information that she got from the sources that she took them from and use them again later when she's creating new documents to share and collaborate with the team. Next up, we need to communicate these things with the team on a regular basis. And Stacy, would you like to come up and share how Irene's going to do that?
Hi, everyone. I'd like to give you a little bit more context on Irene. So before Irene used G Suite, the simple task of creating a group meeting was daunting. She had to find where everybody was. She would often get distracted. She was always context switching. Now that Irene uses G Suite, and as we saw her using the side panel, things are getting a lot easier. Irene uses the side panel for making updates to her calendar invites. She can also check her schedule. In this case, Irene remembers that there's something she forgot to add to the leadership review. So she wants to make a quick update to the meeting description right from within her Gmail. She can do this, and everybody on the invite is instantly updated. And at the same time, she hasn't missed any important email. And as we heard from Mario, Irene also uses keep notes. She's made quite a few keep notes as she's been organizing for the big review. And today I'm going to share with you a special sneak peek at a feature coming out in Keep on your mobile. So she had previously made that note for Mike that they were going to later on sync on a document. And what do you know? In between meetings, she checks her phone and goes into Keep and sees that Keep has given her a nice reminder. It says, create a meeting with Mike. So she can easily click on that suggestion and the meeting gets set up right into her calendar. She doesn't have to pre-populate anything, and her and Mike are all set to go. That neat feature of Keep Explorer will also suggest not only calendar meetings, but also suggesting writing emails, suggesting setting reminders. And there she is setting up the meeting with Mike. So speaking of meetings, finding conference rooms and setting up meetings can be a real pain point. And we know this. I'm sure many of you work with people across the globe, and setting up meetings is not always easy. Even Mario and I work in different offices, and we meet a lot. He's in Sunnyvale, I'm in New York. So we have to figure out, we don't want to waste a lot of time setting up the meeting to make our meeting productive. Thankfully, Google has something new that we can share with you today called automatic room suggestions. What this does in Calendar, once you put in your attendees, Google Calendar automatically can see where the attendees are located, how many people are in the meeting invite, what kind of equipment is in the room, and all you need to do is knowing the attendees. You don't need to know the buildings. It makes it really simple. So Irene is really happy with this because she has some weekly meetings to set up for her review and for all the check-ins they're having up in the coming weeks. She can use this automatic room suggestions, and once her meeting is booked, she feels really confident that nobody will be scrambling and they can focus on the content of the meeting. So the other thing about meetings is we want to keep them effective and productive. So I'm sure there's some of you here that have walked into a meeting, had a meeting. By the time you leave the meeting, you're kind of not sure. Did anybody take notes? Is anything happening after this meeting? Can I see if anybody has kind of been in a meeting like that? I know I have. Yeah, I see some hands there. So Google has something new also that we're excited to give you a sneak peek of. It's called Quick Meeting Notes. This way, right from Calendar, Irene is able to select this Quick Meeting Notes template, and within the template, it's very easily structured for her to capture just what they need in the meeting. They can take notes, they can track action items, and have all the info that they need in one easy document to capture what they need for a productive meeting. So now that they're in their productive meeting, they're coming up with some things to do. There's always a lot to do, and these things can be hard to manage. But thankfully, in Google Docs is giving her some great suggestions. Google Docs can see the content of their meeting notes and sees that some of the items relate to Mike or relate to Irene. So Google Docs gives them an option to assign these items. And Irene and team are thrilled with this because it's helping them keep them more organized. As you can see here on the screen, Irene is able to assign an item to herself. The other thing that Irene and her team are taking advantage of is the templates that are in Google Sheets. They found a great project timeline template that's helping them keep track of all of these action items. There's a lot they want to keep track of up until their big review, and there's still many ways that they could have kept track of it, but this is really working well for them. It's just what they needed so they don't miss anything important. They were able to find this right in the Sheets template gallery. So now Irene and her team they've had a bunch of meetings, they're well underway, they have a lot of good work done, but they're not always in a meeting, and they're always busy doing things. So a great thing that they've found is chatting with each other through Hangouts chat. They're able to do quick chats when they need to just catch up on something offline, or even group chats. Irene has set up some chat rooms for the team to communicate, which have worked really well for them. This way, they can have discussions in the chat room and even refer back to them later. The chat rooms are searchable, and they are always available. So they've had great success with this. So now, we've talked about a bunch of ways that Irene and her team are communicating better with G Suite. I'm just going to recap some of them. So we saw how Irene was using the side panel inside Gmail to be able to update her calendar and check her schedule. We also saw how the new feature that we gave you a sneak peek and keep of Explore offers nice suggestions so that Irene could make notes and then get helpful suggestions to keep her items on the right track. We also saw in Calendar how difficult it can be to schedule meetings when we're all across the globe in different places. Automatic room suggestions is helping us with this with just the attendees, the calendar system knows which size room you need, which location is close to your desk, and all of those things to give you the confidence when you book a meeting that it will actually happen. We also saw the Quick Meeting Notes template, which is helping us keep our meetings effective and productive. And then once you're in the meeting and taking those good notes, Google Docs is offering action items so that you can assign items to each other and make sure that you're getting things done. The project tracking in Sheets has been awesome for Irene and her team as well. They found a good template so they can keep all of their action items on track. And finally, we looked at chat. Chat is quick and easy, and the team can all communicate no matter where they are. They can chat individually, and then they can chat as groups. And they love that they can search from past conversations so they don't lose any information. So they've made a lot of progress, Irene and her team. Now they're getting really close to the review. It's really important that they have tight collaboration. Zeina's going to come up and tell you more about how they're collaborating.
So earlier in the session, I was mentioning that it's not just about that final slide deck. There's a lot of work that actually happens behind the scene, mostly technical work, data analyses, etc. Irene's team actually has a spreadsheet like this one. It's tracking sales at various retailers for the old stove model. In the old world, you would actually go through a big data set like this one and type in formulas to extract insights, data insights. And everyone probably has a favorite formula in Sheets or their favorite spreadsheet tool. Mine, for example, is index and match. I'm sure some of you really like VLOOKUP. But Google Sheets actually wants you to not care about these formulas. We want to save you the time of memorizing what the right parameter is and typing in a multi-line formula. So we have an answers tool, as you see here in the sidebar. You can actually type in questions in natural language. What does that mean? You can type in something like, what is the store with the highest revenue? We figure out where that revenue column is. We figure out what does it mean, what is the word store. And we interpret your question that came in natural language and give you an answer, a number. Behind the scenes, we actually had to figure out a formula like this one that's shown in the blue box on the sidebar. And in the same sidebar, we often also suggest charts or pivot tables that we extracted from the big data set without you even typing in a question. Now, a lot of this work, like for example, spreadsheet analysis, happens at your desk. But we can't underestimate the time you spend commuting to meetings or to conferences like this one, or even flying to different cities. Mobile apps on both iOS and Android help Irene and her team work while on the go. And Irene's team is actually often traveling because they visit factories, production factories, and they often have poor Wi-Fi or even no Wi-Fi on the plane. So when they're in that scenario, not only can they view their files offline, but they can also edit them. So for example, they're editing the slide deck, making changes to the images, typing in text. All of these edits are happening offline, actually sync with the latest version of the slide deck once they're online again. So yes, your files are in the cloud, but we actually save an offline version for you to access while you don't have internet. And with a busy travel schedule, Irene's team not only has to work on the go, but they also have to meet on the go. Hangouts makes it easier for Irene to connect with her team because with every calendar invite that she sends out, there's an easy to join video call link. So you don't actually have to set up a video conferencing code. Irene's team has a Hangouts Meet call by default, like shown here. They also benefit from Hangouts Meet on their mobile phone, so they don't have to pull out their laptop in airports. You can actually take video calls on your phone as well. Finally, a lot of people prefer to dial in from their phone if they don't want to have their picture up or they don't want to be on a high internet bandwidth. And these phone numbers, the US dial-in phone numbers, appear for all G Suite customers by default when they create a calendar invite. And anyone can actually dial into this number even if they're not on G Suite, just like they would dial in a regular phone number on their phone. Now, like many people at work, Irene and her team are heavy on email. With so much movement as they're racing against that deadline in 3 weeks, sometimes things fall through the cracks and they need a nudge in order to remember the important emails. The new nudge feature in Gmail reminds Irene of outgoing email that she didn't hear back on. That way, she can resend it and remind the recipient that they need to take an action item. Nudging also works the other way around for incoming email. Irene could be reminded that she received this email 3 days ago and she needs to reply. The nudge feature is part of that new Gmail experience that we rolled out to the early adopters program back in April. And earlier this week, we actually announced that the new Gmail with the nudge feature and other new features that I'm going to go over is generally available to all G Suite customers starting this week. And as you can see here, there's one more feature that I want to mention is the Smart Compose. And it's much more than just the type ahead feature that you're used to on your mobile phone. It actually completes full phrases and even full sentences. So you can tab through to complete emails that have common phrases that you type over and over again. Now back to Docs. A lot of the legal contracts actually happen in Google Docs today. Irene leverages redlining features to suggest changes without actually changing the original content. So the original owner, in this case it could be a lawyer, has to approve the changes before it actually goes in. Sorry, the video is not working. But a lot of these redlining features are used today, not just for legal contracts, but also documents that you're collaborating with the team on. And this also translates well in Google Slides that supports synchronous collaboration. At no point does Irene have to play version roulette, where she sends a V1 of the slide deck, wait for changes to come in, and then take the new version, edit it again, and send it back. And in the meantime, there's a lot of wasted idle time. What you see on the screen here is how collaboration happens in Google Slides today. This is actually how Mario, Stacy, and myself prepared the slide deck today that you see here. There are multiple people making changes in real time without overriding each other's changes. Now, so much great work went into producing that final draft of the legal contract of the slide deck, and there's always the approval process, where you can get stakeholders from PR or legal to approve your final proposal. And without G Suite, Irene and her team would probably use a third-party tool to track that. They would export that final product into a PDF, upload it to some project tracking tool, and ask for approvals. And that would work just fine. However, if one of the approvals actually asked for a change before they approve, they would have to go edit the same file, export it again, send it over for approvals. And version roulettes are just really inefficient, and Irene doesn't actually like them. So with G Suite, this approval workflow is a lot more streamlined. We're excited to announce Drive's upcoming document-centric workflow, which will allow users to get formal approvals on their file. With this feature, Irene can submit her file for approval for specific coworkers. And once that's done, it actually gets locked. The approval has time to approve it. Once it's approved, it also stays locked, and nobody else can edit it. Let's recap all of these tips and tricks during the collaboration phase. In Google Sheets, we offer answers about your data, and you can type in questions in natural language. We empower you to work on the go, and you don't have to have access to Wi-Fi all the time. We save you time while typing emails with Smart Compose. We also make sure that you stay on top of your inbox and emails with the nudge feature in the new Gmail. Last but not least, our real-time collaboration features that we take for granted for Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, the redlining features that organize collaboration, and the new document approval workflow in Google Drive save you a lot of time along the way. And all that brings us to that final stage, the presenting phase, where Irene and her team are ready to present the product plan for UltraStove. So they're back in Hangouts Meet, but this time, people from around the world are dialing in because they don't have to be there in person. The slides can be presented on a screen in the room that they're presenting in. They're also on everyone's laptop or mobile phone. And this applies to meetings no matter the size. At Next, we announced that we will be increasing the maximum participant size from 50 to 100 participants. We'll also allow live streaming to up to 100,000 people. And that number sounds huge, but it's actually the size of all hands at companies like Google. And to minimize interruptions while presenting the UltraStove proposal, Irene actually asked the audience to hold off on their questions and submit questions at a URL where she can take the questions at the end of the meeting. I'm actually going to try out this feature right now, so you can ask me and Stacy and Mario some questions. Get the mouse over here. All right, so you have this URL at the top of the screen, and it will stay on for the remainder of this presentation. So go ahead to the URL at the top and type in your questions that you have about G Suite. You can also vote on questions that other people submit, and we'll be up on stage to answer the top voted questions later. Now, in some of the meeting rooms at Kitchen Appliances, Inc., they actually have Jamboard devices. How many of you have seen the Jamboard device, or some of them at Next? That's awesome. So a lot of you know it's a digital whiteboard, except that it's really collaborative. In fact, it supports up to 16 touches at once. And it actually works really well for presentations with multiple speakers, because I can put the slides up wirelessly, and then I can also use the hand touch input to flip through the slides. So we covered a lot of features. They're all listed here on the slide. And it's all about taking your productivity to that next level. And our hope that we inspired you to take the tips that you learned today back to your company and share with your team the collaboration capabilities that G Suite offers. And all of that is in order to improve the collective productivity at work. And as Googlers, we live and breathe G Suite. We use it every day. But we also want you to hear from other G Suite customers. And you can do exactly that at our Transformation Gallery or the Learning Center. Both URLs will be here on the screen for a bit. And you can actually try a lot of these features that we talked about today, like the sheets, questions, and answers on your mobile phone. So pull out your phone and try it out.